In this session, we're going to talk about Americans' rights for safe working environments. Today, we have government agencies which oversee our places of work to ensure that we have safe working conditions. But 100 years ago, such agencies didn't exist. Many factories were unsafe, and they would hire young children to work long hours for very little money. Our friend Sarah Jones is going to read you a story about a brave young girl who used her freedom of speech to organize other workers to help fight for better working conditions for all.
The book I'm going to read to you today is entitled Brave Girl, Clara and the Shirtwaist Makers Strike of 1909. It was written by Michelle Markle and pictures by Melissa Sweet. This book is dedicated to all the workers everywhere, and it's also for Kathy. A steamship pulls into the harbor carrying hundreds of immigrants and a surprise for New York City. Here is the big steamer, and there's the Statue of Liberty. The surprise is dirt poor, just 5 feet tall and hardly speaks a word of English. Her name is Clara Limlich. This girl's got grit, and she's going to prove it. Look out, New York. Here she is coming off the ship, and there she is with her parents at Ellis Island being processed. Clara knows in her bones what is right and what is wrong. What's wrong begins in a few weeks after the Limliches moved into their tenement in America. No one will hire Clara's father. They will, however, hire Clara. That's right, Clara. Companies are hiring thousands of immigrant girls to make blouses, coats, nightgowns, and other women's clothing. They earn only a few dollars a month, but it helps pay for food and rent. So instead of carrying books to school, many girls carry sewing machines to work. Clara becomes a garment worker. There she is in her tenement neighborhood with her sewing machine going to work and not to school. From dawn until dusk, she's locked up in a factory. Rows and rows of young women bend over their tables, stitching collars, sleeves, and cuffs as fast as they can. Hurry up, the bosses yell. Rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat, hisses Clara's machine. The sunless room is stuffy from all the bodies crammed inside. There are 2 filthy toilets, 1 sink, and 3 towels for 300 girls to share. Clara learns the rules. If you're a few minutes late, you lose half a day's pay. If you prick your finger and bleed on the cloth, you're fined. If it happens a second time, you're fired. The doors are locked and you're inspected every night before you leave to be sure you haven't stolen anything from the factory. And there's a picture of the room where she worked. But Clara is uncrushable. She wants to read. She wants to learn. At the end of her shift, though her eyes are hurt from straining in the gaslight and her back hurts from hunching over the sewing machine, she walks to the library. She fills her empty stomach with a single glass of milk and goes to school at night. When she gets home in the late evening, she sleeps only a few hours before rising again. There she is in the library, and there she is in her room at night reading. As the weeks grind by, Clara makes friends with the other factory girls. At lunch, they share stories and secrets as if they were in school, where they really belong. Clara smolders with anger, not just for herself, but for all the factory girls. They work like slaves. This was not the America she had imagined. The men in the factory tell her that they've been trying to get the workers to team up to form a union. Then they'd strike, refuse to work, until the bosses treat them better. But the men don't think the ladies are tough enough. Oh, not tough enough? Because they're girls? Oh yes, they are. Clara knows it. She'll show them. From then on, the sewing tables and on the street corners, Clara urges the girls to fight for their rights. When the seamstresses are overworked, she says, strike. When they're underpaid, strike. When they're punished for speaking up, she cries, strike. And the girls do. So the girls went on strike. There they are in their picket line with their protest banners and their signs. Each time Clara leads a walkout, the bosses fire her. Each time she pickets, her life is in danger. The bosses hire men to beat her and the other strikers. The police arrest her 17 times. They break 6 of her ribs, but they can't break her spirit. It is shatterproof. Clara hides her bruises from her parents. A few days later, she's on the picket line again, and the other girls think, if she can do it, we can do it too. For weeks, the small strikes go on, but the bosses find other young women to take their places for the same low pay and long hours. Here's the club that they beat the women with. There she is being handcuffed to take to jail, and there she is in jail. And there are her parents. There she goes off to picket again. We must do something bigger, thinks Clara and the other leaders. Something huge, a giant strike at every garment factory in the city. The union holds a meeting. Throngs of workers pack the seats, the aisles, the walls. The hall thrums with excitement. Clara listens to speech after speech. The speakers, mostly men, want everyone to be careful. 2 hours pass. No one recommends a general strike. Finally, the most powerful union leader in the country gets to the podium. Not even he proposes action. So Clara does. There they are in the hall with the speakers. That's right, Clara. She calls out from the front of the hall. The crowd lifts her to the stage where she shouts in Yiddish, I have no further patience for talk. I move that we go on a general strike. And she starts the largest walkout of women workers in U.S. history. There she is with her hand held high. The next morning, New York City is stunned by the sight of thousands of young women streaming from factories. One newspaper calls it an army. Another calls it a revolt. It's a revolt of girls, for some who are only 12 years old, and the rest are barely out of their teens. In the coming weeks, Clara is called a hero. She lights up chilly union halls with her fiery pep talks. Her singing lifts the spirits of the picketers. When a group of thugs approaches, she yells, "Stand fast, girls." So here is the picket line in New York City, and there's the sign that says, "Stand fast, girls." And they do, all winter long in the bitter cold, in their cheap, thin coats, tired and starving and scared. The girls walk along the men on the icy sidewalks of the picket line. They spill out of the union halls, blocking the roads, filling street corners and public squares. Newspapers write stories about them. College girls raise money for them. And the rich women, swathed in their fur coats, picket with the factory girls. But by the time the strike is over, hundreds of bosses agree to let the staff form unions. They shorten the work week and raise salaries. The strike emboldens thousands of women to walk out of garment factories in Philadelphia and Chicago. So here they are. Look at all the signs. They're the girls in a revolt. And the strike convinces Clara to keep fighting for the rights of workers. Her throat is hoarse, her feet are sore, but she has helped thousands of people, proving that in America, wrongs can be righted. Warriors can wear skirts and blouses, and the bravest hearts may beat in the girls who are only 5 feet tall. And there she is, looking at the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. And now I'm going to give you a few facts about the garment industry at this time. Between 1880 and 1920, 2 million Jews immigrated to America, fleeing persecution, pogroms, which were the government-sanctioned attacks, and poverty in Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and other parts of Eastern Europe. Many of these immigrants found work in the booming garment industry. In 1909, the year of the general strike, nearly 400 factories employing 40,000 people made blouses for half of the country. Of these workers, 80% were female, 70% were between the ages of 16 and 25 years of age, and 65% were Russian, Eastern European, Jewish. The remainder of the workers were either Italian or Americans. Many of the factory owners were Eastern European Jews who had worked their way up in the business. Abuses were rampant throughout the industry. Many bosses shaved time off lunch hours, set clocks back at the end of the day to fool the workers, made them work long hours, including illegal evening work, for little money, forced them to pay for the cloth they soiled with their blood or spilled food, and fired them at will. Some factories hired girls as young as 6 years old to cut the threads from garments. At the beginning of the 1909 strike, police and judges sided with the affluent factory owners. 600 young women were arrested and 13 girls, one as young as 12 years old, were sentenced to 5 days in the workhouse. Police brutality ceased only when members of the Women's Trade Union League, which was made up of wealthy and middle-class women, joined the picketers and held meetings to publicize the plight. When the strike ended, 339 waist and dress manufacturing firms allowed the workers to form their unions, shorten their work week, and increase their hourly wages. Some companies, though, refused to negotiate, notably the Triangle Waist Factory, where the following year hazardous conditions led to the fire that claimed 146 lives. The tragedy raised public awareness even further about the evils of the garment industry. Clara Lemlich, then in her 20s, investigated health and safety conditions in these garment factories for the union. In the aftermath of the strike, thousands of workers in Philadelphia, as well as in Chicago, Cleveland, and Kalamazoo, Michigan, struck for better working conditions or campaigned for the right to organize a union. Along with Clara, fellow strikers Pauline Newman and Rose Schneiderman took on the leadership roles in the labor movement. The progress made by the garment industry activists affected jobs throughout the country. Though there are still wrongs to be righted, today's workers have a 5-day work week. They have overtime pay and other protections due to this, in great part to the labor leaders like Clara Lemlich and the thousands of brave girls who picketed in the winter of 1909.